Yeah, it's interesting because self-care, a lot of women think, oh, well, that means I just need to schedule in a massage, which is great, or, get my nails done. But what I tell women is your self-care is eating breakfast every morning. That's your self-care. If you're in a good place, everyone in your family's in a good place. It's that upward spiral where, you set the stage. And if you're in a good place, everyone else can be in a good place too. Eating is a priority, getting hydration is a priority, getting in exercise has to be a priority because we don't want to arrive in menopause with weak bones and weak muscles. We want to be strong. We want to feel empowered. We want to be now able to do the things that we've always wanted to do, but having small children, we weren't able to do. So it's really getting the message out now to be working on our muscles and be aware of what we can do to build stronger bones.
2, 1, 0.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. I'm so happy that you're here. And today I have with me a wonderful woman I met in person in a local biohacking conference and fell in love with her. She is just so sweet and so knowledgeable. And I learned a lot today from this interview. I learned about how some of my favorite yoga stretches and stretches in general can actually have an 89 chance of fracturing my back. Yes, you heard that correctly. Over time. It's not an acute thing. It's not like you're going to bend forward and you're going to fracture yourself. It's when you do it over time, it can actually hurt your spine and what to do to avoid those. We talked about how a lot of people experience brain fog or chronic symptoms, some kind of brain issues or skin issues or chronic fatigue, and they treat the symptoms, but actually the root cause is your gut health and leaky gut or parasites or SIBO. So, how you need to go and treat what actually is causing the symptoms, and then all those symptoms will clear. Anne Lemons is a seasoned physical therapist and practitioner of functional medicine, nutrition, and lifestyle strategies. As a passionate advocate for women's health, Anne empowers her clients to fortify their bones through holistic approaches while addressing the underlying causes of chronic symptoms. Anne is also a certified buff bones instructor and brings specialized training in gut health and heart math to her holistic practice. You're going to learn a lot from this episode. And if you love it, please, please review and share because this is how we spread love. This is how we share more incredible knowledge from incredible people with other people. And also, this is how you can say, wow, Orion, thanks for doing this podcast for the last 8 years and working really, really hard on it and spending a lot of money on it. So we will learn all this incredible information for free. So if you want to give back, please review, share. And I love you for that. And I love you even if you won't do it, but please do it. I would love that. And now, without further ado, on to the show. Hi, Anne. Welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I am so happy that you're here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. Before we begin, can you share with us one of your most treasured childhood memory?
One of my most treasured childhood memories has to be going to the Cape with my family, going to the beach and, getting that number one family time together and then being in the sand, being near the ocean. It's something that always grounds me and kind of brings me back to, at least gets my nervous system back to a place of balance for me. So I think it's going to the beach with my family. We spent a lot of time at the beach.
I love it. I gave a hypnosis session today. It was a long one. It was almost 3 hours, and it takes a lot of out of me. when you're focused for so long on the person, and it having like the most pure intention connection you possibly can have. So at the end of it, I felt kind of drained, almost tired. And I went out to the backyard. We live on a lake, and I put my feet on the ground and I hugged the tree, and I was just connecting, and I was kind of like releasing anything that doesn't belong to me, or that I don't need, and then like receiving all the good energies from God, from nature. Um, and we sometimes we see swans in our lake. It's very surprising. We have three. I saw three of them, and then I only saw one. So I asked for a sign. I said I want to see if I can connect with it, with that uh swan, and if it will come. So I'm waiting for that. Maybe tomorrow, maybe today. I'll keep an eye out.
It's something really amazing when we get into nature. It brings our bodies to a place where we can get into that self-healing mode. And that's really what my practice is all about, is helping people to get into that self-healing mode. And we can do that for sure with nature, getting outside, getting into nature.
Yes. I want to dive into your story and your purpose today. Maybe you can share some of it with us.
I'd love to. I've been in the health space now for almost 40 years. And I started as a physical therapist, which was wonderful. And then I expanded my repertoire into functional medicine out of necessity. I was about 15 years ago, I was really struggling physically, emotionally. I was in a bad place. I was exhausted all the time. I would wake up in the morning exhausted, wasn't sure how I was going to get through the day. I had chronic pain through my whole body. I was not sleeping, and I had severe digestive issues and bloating where I looked like 6 months pregnant all the time. And I was eating really well, like very whole food based. I was doing everything I thought was correct. But I wasn't feeling well. I didn't feel well. And I thought, well, if I feel this way, in my 40s, what am I going to feel like when I'm 60? So I went and had the usual test done, conventional medicine testing done. And on paper, I looked absolutely normal. There was no testing that showed anything that was out of balance or, out of range, but I knew there was something else going on and I wanted to get deeper into it. And that's when I found functional medicine, because they're asking a different question. They're not asking the question, what are your symptoms, which is then traditionally matched with a diagnosis, and then that's normally matched with a medication. They're asking, why? Why do you have those symptoms and why are they showing up now? So they're digging deeper into root causes. And at that point, I was able to get some functional testing done. And here's what they found: I had a parasite, one of the worst parasites that there is. I had a severe overgrowth of bacteria in my small intestine. This is called SIBO. You may have heard that word before, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And I had a bunch of other issues as well that weren't picked up with conventional medicine testing. And the reason I'm telling you this is because those gut issues were some of a few of my root causes for my most recent diagnosis of osteoporosis. Because if our gut is leaky, and I can go into that a little bit more too, if it's leaky, then what happens is it's creating this low grade inflammation that we're not even aware of. We're not even aware of this. And this inflammation drives osteoporosis. Inflammation is a root cause of osteoporosis. Now, there's other causes as well, but it's a big one. So here I have all this inflammation going on in my gut because I was not feeling well for quite some time. And because of the leaky gut, I wasn't absorbing well. I wasn't absorbing the nutrients and the minerals that I needed for building stronger bones. And I wasn't absorbing my protein. So these are all important components of building strong bone and good muscle mass and strength. So that was my introduction to, wow, I need to really, figure this osteoporosis thing out, because I'm losing bone. And one of the first things that I noticed in my 50s was suddenly I couldn't lift a suitcase overhead in the overhead bin. Like, what's happening? Right. So I'm just something that I could do very easily before, all of a sudden I noticed I was losing muscle mass. So gut health was, a critical part of, how I came into this space of functional medicine and helping women and helping people to really improve their gut health, because it's at the root cause of so many things, osteoporosis included.
So how do you deal with leaky gut, and then how do you deal with parasites, and then how do you deal with SIBO? It's like those three things seems like so hard to fix, and especially parasites because they're everywhere. Everywhere, like even if you go to a restaurant, you don't know how clean they are. You go to public restrooms, you eat sushi. I know that even in like tiny piece of sushi, you have so many potential parasites.
Yes.
So how do you deal? How do you handle this?
Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. So in terms of the parasites, I'll tell you how I treated it. I'll tell you sort of the root causes behind this, and then how I treated it, and then how we want to think about digestion so that we prevent these things from happening. So with the parasite, what happens with our digestive system is we are supposed to have a really robust amount of acid in our stomach. All right. So we're supposed to have a lot of acid in our stomach so that it kills things that are coming into the body that shouldn't be in the body. So if you're eating that sushi, you should have enough acid in the stomach that it's killing whatever parasites may be coming in. I personally don't eat raw sushi anymore after my parasite experience, so I'll give you that. But if you have enough good acid in the stomach, you should be able to kill things that are coming in, and you should be able to break things down enough. So that's one aspect of it. And the problem that I see today is there's so many people on these proton pump inhibitors for reflux and heartburn. And so they're actually lowering their acid. So now they don't have that defense mechanism anymore. They don't have enough acid to be not only killing things that are coming into the body, but also to break food down. And if we don't have enough acid, we're not breaking down our protein very well. We're not able to absorb B12 or iron very well. So there's a whole downstream problem when we don't have enough stomach acid. So that's part of the problem when it comes to parasites, is just taking a look at what is happening digestively that you couldn't fix this. You couldn't kill this in the first place. For myself, I did need to take a certain antibiotic to get rid of it. It's one of the parasites you don't want to mess around with. And I did take an antibiotic to get rid of that particular one, and I was able to get rid of it. Now, totally different from the overgrowth of bacteria in the gut. And so SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, has to do with bacteria that is sort of translocated from the large intestine into the small intestine. Your small intestine shouldn't have a lot of bacteria. That's where we do most of the absorption. That's where most of the absorption takes place. But if we've got a parasite or we've got bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine where we're supposed to be absorbing, we're not going to be absorbing things. Our intestinal lining is only one cell thick, believe it or not. So when you have these irritants like parasites or bacteria, but it could even be stress. Stress causes leaky gut. It could be taking nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory medications, These are things that create leaky gut. And then your outside world starts to come in contact with your inside world. Your immune system is sitting on the other side of that wall.
So wait, when you take anti-inflammatory can cause leaky gut?
Over a long period of time. If you're taking them every day,
What about ginger and turmeric?
no, that's different. So when I'm talking about the over-the-counter medications like Aleve or Advil, those sorts of things, that's not a natural compound. So those types of medications can cause more of the leaky guts. There's a lot of things that can cause leaky gut. For me, it was those two things, and I wasn't absorbing. So with SIBO, that takes a different approach. You can do either an antibiotic, and there's a certain antibiotic that is phenomenal for SIBO that doesn't affect us systemically. So it's not killing off all the good gut bacteria. It stays focused in the small intestine. So it's not focused in the large intestine where we have, our beautiful microbiome. It's more focused in the small intestine. So that was able to help me, along with I took some herbals with that. And then it's a very slow recovery. It took me a long time because guess what? The foods that I was eating that were good for me, that were very high fiber. And for people with SIBO, fiber makes it worse. So all the good fiber that's supposed to feed your good gut bacteria is feeding the bad bacteria because it's in the wrong place. So I had to kind of back off from fiber for a while and then gradually start to increase it. And that's a key sign for people that have SIBO is if they have bloating, if they have a combination of either diarrhea or constipation or both, and if they react poorly to fiber.
So what was the diet? Was it like the carnivore diet?
No, so it was more of a combination. It was more of a low FODMAP diet, but it was individualized. I never give a set diet for a diagnosis. It's very individualized. So it's low FODMAP. So it's avoiding the higher FODMAP foods, which, believe it or not, are like your onions and your garlic, your legumes. Uh, People with SIBO tend to do poorly with those things. So you have to, and there's kind of lists that you go by. So you start off more low FODMAP until you can bring that bacteria volume down and you can start to heal the gut lining. And a lot of it has to do with lifestyle. We've got to really dial in on managing stress because that causes leaky gut as well, and making sure that we're getting good sleep. So, really, all the lifestyle pieces, the exercise, and then addressing it with diet. So, it was a long recovery.
How do you know that you recovered? Did you do another test?
So initially you can do a test to make sure that the bacteria count is coming down. But then after, if you're feeling good, there's no need to repeat the test. If the bloating is down, if your bowels are normalizing, there's really no need to repeat the test.
Is there any test you recommend?
Yes. So there's a specific test for SIBO. It's a breath test. So it's very different. It's not a stool test. A stool test you do to find a parasite. For bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine, you would do a breath test. And with this test, you are drinking some type of substrate. It's usually a sugar drink. And then you're breathing into a tube every 15 or 20 minutes or so over 2 to 3 hours, because what happens is that bacteria eats the sugar and then they essentially burp out this gas, and you exhale the gas into the tube, and then all those tubes are sent to the laboratory, or some people do it in their GI doctor's office, and then they measure the gas to see, has there been a change in gas levels with treatment. If so, and it's down to normal, there's no need to continue treatment. If not, then we need to either continue treatment or change treatment. It's a long road, and it's a high relapse.
Oh yes, it's so hard to avoid. Do you recommend going and to seeing a traditional allopathic doctor or a functional doctor?
So it depends. It depends. Your functional medicine doctor will most likely be more versed in SIBO, but generally we want to see a SIBO specialist, and that could be a naturopathic doctor, it could be a functional medicine doctor, it could be a functional nutrition practitioner. You're really looking for someone that specializes in SIBO. That said, you may need someone on board that can prescribe. It gets a little tricky because,
What's not tricky?
well, it's tricky because, and believe me, I'm in the Northeast, and it's very difficult to find GI docs here that are using some of the newer, let's say, using some of the newer treatments for SIBO. I've found it very challenging to find a GI that's doing that. And so some of the naturopathic doctors are fantastic, or you could work with a functional medicine doctor. Usually, you will see if they're specialized in SIBO. You would definitely want them to be specialized in SIBO to do it because it's a long journey, and you have to be familiar with some of the newer medications as well as the herbals, because some people do better with medication and some people do better with herbals, and it's nice to have that availability of both is what I've found in my practice.
I wish there was a magical pill that solves all of it, because there it's very common to have all three. I believe leaky gut and SIBO, and what was the third one?
And parasites.
And a parasite. Yes, it's very common for people to have. Most people walk around with parasites and they don't even know it. I think most people have SIBO, and a huge amount of the population have leaky gut, and then it shows as brain fog, chronic fatigue, and other symptoms.
You can assume it.
Yes. So what are the symptoms?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So leaky gut can be local symptoms. So you could have stomach pain, you could have bloating, you could have diarrhea, constipation, or it could be systemic symptoms. Exactly as you said, brain fog, um, cognition issues. It could be skin issues like acne, psoriasis, rosacea. It could be joint pain. It could be anything happening with any of the glands, your thyroid gland. It could be any body symptom at all could be related to what's going on in the gut. I mean, it's really from a functional medicine standpoint, we always start with the gut for everything. Because again, if if that gut wall is leaky, if you think about that gut wall as one cell thick, I like to picture it like a coffee filter, right? That coffee filter, we put the grounds in. That's the food that you take into your body. That's everything you take into the body. All you want is the nice coffee coming through. You don't want toxins coming through, mycotoxins from mold or parasites coming through. We want to keep that gut wall strong. And when it's not, when it breaks down and things go to the other side, the body doesn't recognize those things, and it sets off a systemic response. It sets off the immune system that creates inflammation in any area of the body, any area at all. It's amazing to me when I see people with acne and they've tried all the topical things. And then we start working on their gut and their liver, and it all clears up because your acne is an internal problem. It's the skin is a reflection. Think about this. Your outer skin is a reflection of your inner skin, and the inside of that gut lining is your inner skin. Whatever's happening there is just showing up on the outside skin.
Wow. Do you think we need to check young kids as well for parasites and leaky gut? Like, how young do they get it? Like, I'm sure they get it too, because they're exposed to everything that we are exposed to.
So, it's interesting you asked that question because when I started practicing initially, we were testing everybody for, doing stool tests and all the functional tests. But what I found is it's really not necessary. Take a look at symptoms, take a look at behavior. So for kids, I'm looking at what's happening behavior wise. That may be an indication that there's leaky gut, where for adults it may be more like anxiety and depression. That's a sign of leaky gut. But for kids it might be more that they're acting up and their behavior changes. That would be maybe an indication to start taking a look at the gut. And then always looking at timeline. Tell me about your travel experience. Even though we don't need to travel outside the US to get a parasite, we know that. But tell me, what are you eating? I'm looking at timeline to make more of a determination that way. And then, of course, what are the bowel habits looking like? Are they normal? And by normal, you'd be surprised what people tell you. They'll say, "I've got normal bowel movements," and they'll say, "Well, They'll say I go once a week." I'm like, "Once a week? It's not normal." But so people don't understand that's just normal to them. So we take a look at
What is normal though? Is it twice a day normal or once a day?
So it's different for everyone, but at least once a day. For some people, they'll have a bowel movement after they eat, every time they eat, but at least once a day. We want to be, getting rid of that stool. We don't want things to be backing up and, possibly creating a scenario where we've got overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine. So definitely want to be taking a look at bowel habits and for kids to see what are they doing. And oftentimes if kids are constipated, a lot of times I find they're just not drinking enough water. Their diet is not whole food enough. They're not getting enough fiber. There's stress involved. We have to take a look at a lot of things.
I'm really struggling with my young one because he really likes foods that are not very healthy. I will cook a really like nice healthy thing, and he will just like, it's yucky, it's not yummy, and I'm just like, no, I've been working for hours on this. I made sourdough bread for the first time, and oh, and I want to ask you about gluten too, and if sourdough bread is good or not good. But I made it for the first time, and it was amazing. And I went through the whole process. My friend taught me, and it was beautiful. It was like really like I discovered something new and exciting. Um, and I gave him a piece of that sourdough bread, but I put on it uh, on like raw butter, that you get from a specific like farm. And maybe he didn't like the butter because he took a bite of that sourdough bread and he's like, yucky. I'm like, no, you're not serious. This is the best bread I've ever tasted in my life. I changed the butter and he ate it, but it's hard. It's really hard to make a little one eat the way you want them to eat. Any suggestions?
I think, all you can do is offer and set your example. And the other thing too is kids like to be involved. So if you get them involved in the cooking, they may be more apt to eat it.
He baked the bread with me.
He baked the bread with you.
Well, not really. Well, he was there and he mixed the dough for a split second. And I told him that because he mixed the dough, every time he touches something I cook, I tell him now it's going to be extra tasty because you touched it.
I think you're doing all the right things. And I think as long as you are, if you can bring in, like a shake in the morning where you can include, kind of bring some things into a smoothie that it gives him a little bit more, protein and fat and fiber that might, and have him, help pick out the ingredients too. But you can sneak in so much nutrition in a smoothie and make it taste really great. And bananas make it taste really great. And whether he likes chocolate and if he likes peanut butter. And I always have sort of the formula of, get the protein in there, get a healthy fat in there, and get some fiber in there. But you could throw in a little chia seeds, that gives him fiber. You can throw in a little ground flax, and he's not going to really taste it. But, have him help you make that. And that's a good way to start sneaking in nutrition at the beginning of the day, which may help to set his whole mood and activity for the rest of the day.
Thank you. That's a wonderful tip. I will. I'll do it tomorrow.
There you go.
Today is lost, but tomorrow is a new day.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Amazing,
I remember
amazing.
those days.
Okay, I wanted to talk to you about gluten. What do you think about gluten? How bad is it? And do you think sourdough bread might be a little better because they pre-digests the gluten for a very long time?
Hmm. So, when I went through my training, gluten was very demonized, and we do know through the research that gluten does cause leaky gut in everybody. And so, anytime you open up those gates of the gut lining, you leave yourself more vulnerable to inflammation. However, and this is based on the work from Alessio Fasano. He's one of the leading experts in leaky gut, and he basically said we just don't know how long those gates are open. So for some people, the gates or that opening may be very fast and it'll close again. And for other people, it may stay open. And the longer that happens, the more vulnerable we are to triggering off the immune system and inflammation. So if we're going to do gluten, I think fermenting it in like a sourdough is a much better way to do it. But ideally, we want to track. I mean, that's how I work with all of my patients to say, let's take this out for a month and let's track your symptoms and then let's bring it back in on its own. So we have a clearer picture, because when we've got so much inflammation going on, it's really hard to tell until you take it completely out and then you see how it works for you and your bioindividuality. Now, that said, I really don't do gluten because of, the potential for leaky gut for myself. And I have done some food sensitivity testing that says I am very sensitive to gluten. And I know because I feel it in my body. I feel it. It affects my digestion. I get back pain. I start to, feel more swelling or more inflammation in my face. So I know for me, it's not a good food. So when we continue to eat foods that we know cause something, we know that we're creating some inflammation in the body. So I'm not an all or nothing. I think if you can break that gluten down by that fermenting process with the sourdough, it's a much better way to have it.
And a much longer and complicated way to have it. And that's very time consuming. and and it's very frustrating because when growing up, I ate everything. I ate all the baking goods. We had bread like 3 times a day. We had cakes. Like gluten was like never a thing. I could eat anything. I could. And now that I'm older, I celebrate 27 every year. I'm still 27.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, now that I'm old, like now I got sensitive. I do have gluten sensitivity, and it's hard. Like this dance, my dance with gluten is it's 2 step forward and 1 step backward.
Exactly. It becomes, for me now, I don't crave. The thing that I missed the most was pizza. And it's more how I'm eating now because I try to make every meal as nutrient dense as possible that I don't miss it so much. I don't, it's not part of my vernacular anymore because it's just, I really try to load up with enough protein and fat and fiber that I'm not missing something in a meal. And that's one of the things I think that women are missing as they get older is the protein. And we certainly need protein for bone and for muscle. So getting in enough protein every day, I think, is important. And when I listen to what women, because I work primarily with women, what they're eating, and they're like, well, I eat an egg in the morning or I have a cup of yogurt. It's just not enough. It's not enough. And what happens when you hit that menopausal period is you get, estrogen just gets completely depleted. Estrogen goes out the building, and you're going to notice a loss in muscle mass and a loss in strength. And that's what I was telling you earlier, is I noticed all of a sudden what was happening. I couldn't lift my overhead luggage, and that has a lot to do with the hormonal imbalance piece. So when we're talking about bone health, we definitely want to be looking at the gut, and because that's important for inflammation and absorption, but we also want to be looking at building muscle with by eating, getting enough protein, and doing the right types of exercise.
What does inflammation do to the body?
So it drives certain things to break down, and it ages us a lot faster. It ages us a lot faster, and it creates pain for a lot of people too. So when we're talking about any kind of chronic disease, we look at root cause, inflammation is always there. So whatever we're doing, we want to be, a low inflammatory diet and a low inflammatory lifestyle. So, we talked about diet a little bit, but lifestyle is getting enough sleep, it's managing stress. When we're not doing those things, we're driving inflammation up. Again, driver of so many chronic diseases.
Yes. I think that I have inflammation and a lot of the things we talked about, and I kind of want to ignore it. I also noticed a lot of moms, especially new-ish moms, tend to neglect themselves. They eat last. They don't eat at all. Everybody comes first, and then there is the mother guilt if you leave them with the sitter or the nanny, or it's so complicated. And even for me, even though I preach, take care of yourself and remember to put yourself first, my husband tells me that I don't at all. And he's like, you, like half a day goes by and you forget to eat, yet you take care of everybody else.
Yeah, it's interesting because self-care, a lot of women think, oh, well, that means I just need to schedule in a massage, which is great, or, get my nails done. But what I tell women is your self-care is eating breakfast every morning, is eating a good breakfast. That's your self-care, because it's going to help you. It's going to help if you're in a good place, everyone in your family's in a good place. It's that upward spiral where you set the stage, and if you're in a good place, everyone else can be in a good place too. So it's making that, eating is a priority, getting hydration is a priority, getting in exercise has to be a priority, because
I'm going to drink my tea now just because you reminded me.
yes, go right ahead. um, because we don't want to arrive in menopause with weak bones and weak muscles. We want to be strong. We want to feel empowered. We want to be now able to do the things that we've always wanted to do, but, having small children, we weren't able to do. So it's really getting the message out now to, be working on our muscles and be aware of what we can do to build stronger bones.
Yeah, and I have a confession to make. It's almost 4 p.m. I did not eat breakfast, and I ate like one fast yogurt that I found that is probably full of sugar and unhealthy for me. It wasn't even organic. That was today. So how do you put your mindset where like, okay, I'm gonna have breakfast. I'm gonna take care of myself because I break that agreement with myself more than a few times.
It's not easy. I mean, being a mother and having to do the whole morning routine, I remember that so well, but I also remember how poorly I felt if I didn't eat breakfast, if I didn't prioritize at least that first meal of the day. For me, it was a blood sugar issue. So I would feel cranky. I would be exhausted. I wouldn't be able to give anything to my family, let alone my patients. So that became a priority because I had to associate it with how badly I felt if I didn't. And I think that's the piece where you have to feel badly enough and know that there's an association with that to, get up in the morning, have your shake things ready the night before. So you're just throwing it in the blender and then you can take it and go. And bonus, you can, give it to your child as well. You can both start the day. So it's, habits are not easy to change, but we have to give ourselves grace that we're trying our best. You're not going to get it 100% right, but on the days that you do right, I'm going to tell you a little secret. You have to celebrate it. When you have breakfast for yourself, you need to physically celebrate, like jump up and down, give yourself a high five, pat yourself on the back, tell yourself, look in the mirror, tell yourself, I'm a rock star. There's a whole neurological piece that happens when you do that. It will help you to reinforce the behavior. So celebrate it.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna get gold stickers and just and just
Gold stickers. Yeah, I mean, and share it with your child too, All right, we did well today. We had our shake today. Yay, we're going to feel amazing today. And you may be surprised, he might be like, "Yeah, mom, I felt more energy at school. I wasn't so tired." And a lot of times when kids are reaching for, and women too, reaching for more carby things, it's because they haven't started the day with enough protein.
properly, yes. Wow, so much to do, but it's so good to, I know some of those things. Of course I am. Who doesn't? But we tend to forget. And then the way you say it makes it sound like fun and not hard work. Sometimes you talk to people that do nutrition or give you nutrition guidance and everything sounds so heavy. You're like, I give up. I can't even. Sounds great. No, I can't do it. Sounds good for other people.
Yeah. One step. Yeah, just one thing. Like, don't try to accomplish everything. Just one thing. Like, I'm gonna, and make it a really easy goal. Like, I'm gonna do it 3 times this week: Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then commit to it, and then commit to it, and then when you do it, celebrate it. That's how that's how we change behavior. And this whole thing about it takes 21 days to make a new habit, that's not true. It takes longer than that. So, keep at it. Keep at it. Don't beat yourself up if you miss a day. Just keep at it. You'll get there. And then it won't feel good if you don't do it. You will notice a difference. If I don't eat well, that's not good. I don't feel right. I don't think right. My day doesn't go as well.
I feel like I have bone loss, bone density. My bone density is shrinking.
Bone density.
Yes, I know that. I used to be so strong. I used to be so strong, and now I'm so the opposite. Um, it's very hard to deal with this new identity, and I'm working on changing that. Besides exercise and having more protein and cleaning your gut, I mean, those are all a lot of things that someone need to do. What else do we need to know about bone density and how to not notice when we lose it and how to treat it?
Okay. So great question. So a couple of things. We can get a DEXA scan done. This is a bone scan.
But they're drilling into your bone, don't they?
No, no, no. No, no, no. It's an X-ray. They're basically just it's painless. You're just, sitting there or lying there and it's just an X-ray, a specific type of X-ray, and they take a look at the density. And every woman should have it just to know where they're at. Unfortunately, insurance doesn't typically pay for it until you're 65 in most areas, which is completely wrong unless you have a history of it in your family. Like I have it, my mother has osteoporosis, so I had a DEXA scan done early, but here's the thing, get it done. Know what your numbers are because then you can be proactive about it. You don't want to wait till 65 and find out your bones are really not doing well and the only option for you is medication, and some of these medications have really really tough side effects. So get your that's number 1, get your DEXA scan done.
Actually, I used to be a personal trainer a long time ago, and I remember reading studies, and even women in their 70s and 80s, when they started exercising, like lifting heavy weights, they did increase their density. No medication required.
I'm so glad you brought that up. So this is where we empower women, and this is my mission. You asked that earlier. My mission is really to close the education gap around bone health for patients and for physicians, because a lot of the physicians, all they know is medication as the option, but there's so much more we can do. What we found in terms of exercise, and this is one of the more recent studies, it's called the Lift More trial. And what they did is they took about 100 postmenopausal women with osteoporosis and they put them through, there were only about 4 or 5 exercises that they did with them, but it was heavy resistance and impact. So impact training, where you leave the ground and you come down on your feet, both feet, that's impact training. And these two components together, what they found was that there was a significant difference in bone density in the low back, and the hip, more in the low back than the hip, but women were able to build bone. And I will say, all of these people in the trial were under very close supervision by a physical therapist or an exercise specialist. So they weren't just out there willy nilly, and they were doing it twice a week. There were only 5 exercises or so. And, it was a significant difference. And I've seen it time and time again when you do progressive resistive exercise. And this was my problem. I was only doing Pilates and yoga, which I'm sorry to say, the studies do show it's not enough to build bone. I then had to start doing more heavy weight and doing progressive resistive exercise. So if you are doing, 2 pound weights and 3 pound weights, you gotta start increasing it. And I always tell people, see a physical therapist or a personal trainer that's well versed in osteoporosis to help advance you. So that's really important.
Yeah, I would add to that, see a physical therapist first, because a lot of trainers don't have the depth. Even if they're like, I've been training for 10 years, most of them don't have the depth of knowing exactly how to treat compared to physical therapists that are more, I know they have a deeper knowledge of how to deal with those things.
Exactly. And that's my preference in order, is to do the PT first, because also they can help if you've got pain, they can identify where that pain is coming from and then give you exercises to get out of pain, because if you're in pain, you won't be able to exercise. And they can take a look at whatever else is out of balance, where you may have limitations or you may have strength loss. They can help target those specific areas where most personal trainers are not doing the assessment part. So you need the PT there to do the assessment part.
They don't have the right assessment. They have machines or like, let's measure body fat. They just, most of them don't. 10% of, no. I think 5%, no. I think 3% of all personal trainers have the depth of knowledge to really, really help people. I mean, they'll take a person through an exercise routine, and yes, it's gonna help, but not so specific to help them get to the root cause of what's going on. You have to have somebody who's really, really knowledgeable and knows a lot about anatomy and the body and how to heal it to help you. And most, as a a previous personal trainer myself, I know a lot about the industry. Yeah, physical therapy first, because that can really help.
Such a great point. It's a great point. So I think where a personal trainer can come into play is after they've worked with their PT to understand what they need to be aware of, what limitations they have. Then a personal trainer can take over and bring them through a gradual program. And then I always like to, every 6 months or so, have them go back to PT and just be reassessed to see how they're doing and to see if they need to add anything else to their program. So these are all phenomenal ways that we can build more muscle, build more bone. I think the biggest message is if we're doing things, if we're only doing yoga or we're only doing Pilates, and there's certain things we don't want to be doing within those two disciplines, we still have to bring in strength training, and we have to work on posture as well. Posture is another issue that if we are in a forward head and forward shoulder position, we put weight, too much weight on the front of the spine where we're vulnerable or more susceptible to compression fractures. So that's a fracture that happens in the vertebrae when the bones get weak and we put too much stress on it, from forward bending postures, bending forward from the waist, sitting with slouched posture. So this is a huge piece of osteoporosis treatment, is addressing posture and body mechanics. We can prevent so much.
Yeah, now I'm thinking about my own body, and I nursed my child for 3 years with really horrible posture, and that's probably one of the reasons why I'm struggling with what I'm struggling with. And that said, I am mega inspired because of this interview to take better care of myself, and I think maybe I should go to see a physical therapist. And it's also connected because, even gluten can cause psychotic breakouts in people. And then you have, it's huge. Like it, even the piece about gluten, parasites can create your mindset to be horrible and brain fog. So does SIBO. And then if you look at exercise, and then bone loss can create all this inflammation and also can affect your mindset. But if you strengthen yourself, and even with exercise, I remember an old research where they put people on Prozac for 3 months, and the other group went on just exercise for 3 months. And at the end of those 3 months, the people that exercise had better mood and better cognitive functions than the medication or something like that. So there are natural solutions, like maybe eliminating gluten and figuring it out for yourself, and just listening to all the symptoms that you shared, and taking care of yourself, and like you said, taking it easy and not putting so much pressure for yourself. Because if you're a mom like me, and there is already pressure just being a mom, and life happens and things happen, and then you stress, and then you try to take care of yourself, but then you're stressed about all the things you have to do to take care of yourself. So you're stressed about your stress. So it's about taking a deep breath, and just pick and choose, because you can't do everything at once. But if every day you take care of yourself just a little bit more, you'll feel much better.
A little, exactly. And then it's not so hard once you start to build these habits in, but just you can't try to do 10 new things at once. It's one thing at a time. So just focusing on, if you just focused on getting your breakfast in, more often than not, you're bringing down inflammation, you're balancing your blood sugar, you're feeding your muscles, you're feeding your bones, you're going to have more motivation to do exercise, you're going to have, so everything is an upward spiral with even small changes, even lifting weight, even a little bit of weight, that produces small changes that add up as well. Just sitting up straight, just getting ears over shoulders over hips, getting spine in line, that eases up so much pressure on the spine. That aligns you, that opens up your all the meridians and the energy channels, and allows you to breathe better and just enter the world better. So, these little things, it doesn't have to be a monumental thing that we try to do. So
Yes. And before we started our conversation, you mentioned something about yoga postures that some women should never do.
yes. So and again, this is so bio individual, because there are people that out there that have been doing yoga forever, and they may be perfectly fine doing these postures. But in general, because there's so much more risk of fracture with flexion postures, and they did a study on this too, where they followed women up from 1 to 6 years. They put them either doing all flexion exercises, meaning bending forward exercises, or extension exercises, meaning things on their stomach where they're bending backwards. What they found was, over that period of time, 6 years or so, 16% of the women did fracture doing extension work, but 89% fractured their spines doing flexion types of exercises. So, flexion meaning the rounding forward poses. So, when you're bending over and touching your toes, child's pose. It has to be adapted. So you can do child's pose by, tenting up on your fingertips and rocking back on the hips, but not bending forward. So anyone with osteopenia or osteoporosis, you want to avoid those postures. Any of the deep twists, so like revolved triangle, too much rotational force on the spine. So things like warrior one, where the body is facing forward with the hips ideally facing forward, but that back foot is facing out, that right in warrior one, you need a tremendous amount of hip extension or hip flexibility to keep that hip open. If you don't have, most people have tight hip flexors. So if you don't have a really open hip flexor, you're going to, as you're trying to bring that body front, you're going to create more rotational force in the low back, and that may be too much. So it's more for yoga. It's and Pilates as well. It's avoiding the rounding over postures. It's avoiding end ranges of twisting. You can still do twisting, but not forced twisting. No overpressure from teachers. Sometimes teachers will push on the client. They'll, give overpressure. So you don't want any overpressure. Sometimes even the deeper hip stretches like pigeon pose might be too much on the hip as well. So again, you can adjust this. Like for pigeon pose, you could, don't bend forward, but maybe prop your hip up. That would give you less stress on the hip. There's ways to adapt the postures, but you need to know that we don't want to be doing these postures over and over, because a lot of these compression type fractures happen from a cumulative effect, and not like it's not a single, you know, it's not a single entity. It's happening from cumulative trauma.
That is so good to know. I'm so happy you shared that. Thank you so much. That's awesome. All of it was amazing. And before we say goodbye for now, I would love to have you back on the show and talk more about this and other topics. What are your three top tips to living a stellar life, and where can people find you?
Okay, great. So I would say my top three tips would be to optimize your digestion. That's just going to help you in every part of your health, not only bone, but everything. So optimize your digestion. Um, I would be thinking about, for women, build muscle. build muscle now. We start to lose it very quickly in our 40s and up. So start using those weights and, get yourself to a PT or a personal trainer to help you to increase that in a safe way. And then, thirdly, I would say manage your stress. Managing stress is, again, that's going to help the gut, and it's going to help, every area of your life, and, bring yourself to a place of self-healing. So I'd say those would be the three biggest things that I would want to focus on. Yeah, so to find me, it's on my social media. It's Ann Lemon's Wellness. I'm very active on Instagram. I give a ton of movement tips for women for osteoporosis. And my website is Ann Lemon's Wellness as well. So, and I'm starting a YouTube channel. I've already got, quite a few things up there as well. So it's just Ann Lemon's Wellness. You can find me there, and you can also contact me there.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so, so much. This was a great conversation, and I really appreciate you, and I'm so glad we met. Thank you.
I'm so glad I was here. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It was wonderful.
Thank you. And thank you, listeners. Remember to optimize your digestion, build muscle now, manage your stress, and have a stellar life. This is Orion. Till next time.